The river is smaller than I imagined. After everything, after years of war, after marching across foreign lands, after watching thousands of men follow my command, this is what stands between me and my future. A river, the Rubicon. A place that most people would never remember. A line of water in the countryside. But tonight, this river is the border between two worlds. Behind me are my soldiers. Men who have fought beside me for years. They have crossed mountains. They have survived battles. They have followed me when Rome itself doubted me. And now, they are waiting for my command. Ahead of me is Rome, the city where I was born. The city that gave me everything. My name, my power, my victories. But Rome has also given me enemies. Men who once called me a friend. Men who now believe I have become too powerful. They say I am dangerous. They say I threaten the Republic. Maybe they are right, because every Roman knows the law. A general cannot bring his army into Italy. A soldier follows his commander across the battlefield. But a Roman citizen does not bring soldiers home. Not without permission, not without consequences. If I cross this river, I am no longer just a general. I become a rebel, an enemy of Rome. And if I turn back, I may lose everything. My position, my influence, perhaps even my life. The men behind me are waiting. History is waiting. And I must decide, do I step forward or do I walk away? This is untold history. Not the story of what happened, but the story of what it felt like to stand at the moment when history could have changed forever. To understand why I stand beside this river, you must understand what came before. I was not born a king. Rome did not have kings anymore. For centuries, Romans had built their identity around the idea that no single man should hold too much power. They called it a republic, a system where senators debated, where laws were created, where ambition was supposed to have limits. But Rome was changing. The republic was growing too large, too powerful, too complicated, and men like me learned something important. Power does not always belong to those who deserve it. Sometimes, it belongs to those who know how to take responsibility when others cannot. I spent years building my reputation. I served Rome as a politician, a commander, a leader of armies. I fought enemies beyond Rome's borders. In Gaul, I commanded campaigns that changed the map of Europe. I crossed rivers. I conquered territories. I faced armies far larger than my own. And my soldiers believed in me. Not because of a title, not because of a law, because they had seen me fight beside them. They had seen me share their hardships. They had seen me survive. But every victory created a new problem. The more successful I became, the more Rome feared me. My enemies did not see a servant of Rome. They saw a man who had become too powerful, a man with loyal soldiers, a man with enormous wealth, a man whose name was known across the Republic. They believed that if I returned to Rome with my influence, I could destroy the very system that created me. And perhaps they feared me for good reason. Because ambition is a dangerous thing. Every victory makes the next victory seem possible. Every achievement creates a desire for something greater. But ambition is not always simple greed. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of losing everything you have spent your entire life building. That was my fear. I had spent decades becoming Caesar, and now Rome was asking me to give it all away. People often imagine that the hardest decisions in history are made by people who know exactly what they want. They imagine confidence, certainty, a man standing above everyone else, already knowing the path he will take. But that is not how this moment felt. The truth was much more complicated. I had spent years fighting for Rome. I had expanded its borders. I had brought wealth and glory back to the Republic. But now, after all those victories, Rome was asking me to give everything back. My army, my position, my protection, everything that had made me powerful. Because in Rome, power was not just about honor. It was survival. A Roman politician who lost influence could lose everything. His enemies could destroy his reputation. His allies could disappear. His wealth could be taken. And for a man like me, returning home without an army was not simply retirement. It was surrender. The Senate wanted me to step aside. They said it was about protecting the Republic. They said Rome could not belong to one man's ambition. And perhaps there was truth in their words. But I also knew the men making those demands. Many of them had once supported me. Many had benefited from my victories. Now they feared what I had become. At the center of this conflict was Pompey, once my ally, once someone who stood beside me. Together, we had helped control Roman politics. But alliances in Rome were fragile. Power changes people, and fear changes alliances. Now Pompey and the Senate stood on one side, I stood on the other, and both sides believed they were defending Rome. That was the hardest part. Not choosing between victory and defeat. Choosing between two disasters. If I surrendered my command, I might lose everything I had spent my life building. If I marched toward Rome, I would begin a civil war. A war between Romans. Not against foreign enemies, not against distant kingdoms. Romans fighting Romans. I had spent my life defeating enemies beyond Rome's borders. I had crossed mountains. I had faced armies that wanted to destroy us. But now the enemy was different. The enemy was inside the Republic itself. And perhaps the most difficult question was not, can I win? I knew my soldiers. I knew my ability. I knew the strength of my army. The real question was, what happens to Rome if I do? That night, I walked among my soldiers. Many of them did not know what would happen next. They trusted me, but I wondered, did they understand the price of following me? Perhaps they believed this was another campaign, another battlefield, another victory waiting to happen. But I knew something they did not. After tonight, there would be no returning to the old Rome. The Republic that had existed for centuries was already standing on the edge, and I was the man holding the final decision. The river was waiting. The strange thing about history is that the moments that change everything often feel ordinary while you are living them. There is no thunder, no sign from the heavens, no voice telling you what is right, only silence, only a choice. I stood beside the Rubicon and looked at the water, a river so small that a person could cross it in moments. But on the other side was everything: Rome, power, war, my future. For years, I had convinced myself that my actions were necessary. Every battle, every decision, every sacrifice. I told myself I was protecting my position because I had a duty to Rome. And perhaps I believed that. Perhaps part of me truly did. But another part of me knew the truth. I had spent my entire life climbing upward, and now I had reached the point where stepping backward was impossible. People would later describe this moment as if it was simple, as if I arrived at the river already knowing what I would do. But decisions like this are rarely simple. The people who change history do not always know they are changing it. They only know they are standing in front of a choice. I could stop. I could order my soldiers to turn around. I could return to Rome without my army and hope that my enemies would show mercy. But I knew Rome's politics. I knew my opponents. And I knew that mercy was not guaranteed. The same men who once praised my victories now saw me as a threat. The same republic I had served could now become the force that destroyed me. So I asked myself a question. Not, will I win? But, can I survive if I lose? Then, the moment came. A decision that would be remembered for thousands of years. A decision that would change Rome forever. I gave the order. We crossed. The soldiers followed. One step, then another. And with every movement forward, the possibility of peace became smaller. The river was behind us now. There was no undoing it. No explanation that could erase what had happened. Rome would hear the news. The Senate would react. My enemies would prepare. And history would judge me. Later generations would say that the die was cast. That phrase captured the feeling of that night. Because once the decision was made, the future no longer belonged to me alone. It belonged to everyone who would suffer because of it. Everyone who would fight. Everyone who would die. Everyone who would remember this moment. A small river, a single command. And the end of the Roman Republic had begun. The world did not change in the moment I crossed. The sky did not fall. Rome did not disappear overnight. History rarely works that way. But something invisible had changed. A boundary had been broken. A Roman army had entered Roman territory. And for the first time, the Republic faced a terrifying question. What happens when the man who claims to save Rome has the power to rule it? After crossing the Rubicon, everything moved quickly. The decision that had existed only in my mind became reality. Cities had to choose. Men had to choose. Families had to choose. And suddenly, Romans were no longer united against foreign enemies. They were divided against each other. This was the part that troubled me most. I had spent my life expanding Rome. I had fought enemies who threatened our borders. I had told my soldiers that every battle was for the future of Rome. But now, the battlefield was Rome itself. The greatest danger was no longer an army outside our walls. It was the idea that the Republic could survive a conflict between its most powerful citizens. Among those who stood against me was Pompey. Once my ally, once one of the most respected men in Rome. We had shared power, we had shaped Roman politics together, but now we were enemies. History often remembers battles by their winners, but before every battle, there are people who once knew each other, people who once trusted each other, people who never imagined they would meet on opposite sides. The war continued, and slowly, my victories became more than victories. They became proof that no one could easily stop me. Pompey was defeated, his supporters fell, and the path back to the old republic became narrower. When I returned to Rome, many celebrated me. They saw a victorious commander, a man who had defeated his enemies, a man who had brought order after chaos. But victory can be a strange thing. From the outside, it looks like the end of a struggle. But from the inside, it can feel like the beginning of a new burden. I had achieved what many men in Rome dreamed of: influence, authority, power. But power creates a question that no victory can answer. How much power is enough? I told myself that I was restoring stability, that Rome needed someone strong enough to fix what was broken, and perhaps I truly believed that. But belief and consequence are not always the same thing. The Republic had feared that one man could become too powerful, and now that fear was becoming reality. I was given extraordinary authority, titles, honors, control that previous generations of Romans would have considered impossible. The strange thing about history is that people rarely believe they are the villain of their own story. Most people believe they are solving a problem, protecting something, saving something. I believed Rome needed me. My enemies believed Rome needed to be protected from me. And perhaps the most difficult truth is this: both sides believed they were right. That is how great conflicts begin. Not always with people who want destruction. Sometimes they begin with people who are convinced they are preventing it. The river was behind me. The war was behind me. The victories were behind me. But the question remained: had I saved Rome? Or had I only replaced one crisis with another? I had crossed the Rubicon believing there was no other path. But every choice creates a new road. And every road has a price. I had won the battle for power. But perhaps the greater battle had only begun. Years after the river, after the war, after the victories, I found myself in another moment that would change history forever. The Senate, a place where Rome once debated its future, a place where power was supposed to be controlled. Many people had warned me. Some believed I had become too powerful. Some believed the Republic could not survive while I lived. And perhaps they believed removing me would restore what had been lost. On that day, my enemies did what they believed was necessary. They ended my life, but they did not restore the old Rome, because the truth was, the Republic had already changed. The river had already been crossed. History remembers the moment I crossed the Rubicon. People remember the words, the army, the war that followed. But the river itself was never the true turning point. The real crossing happened before my first step. It happened when I decided that my own judgment mattered more than the rules of the Republic. It happened when I believed that only I could solve Rome's problems. And that is the danger of power. Not that it always begins with evil intentions. Sometimes it begins with a person who truly believes they are doing what must be done. Standing beside that river, I had one choice: step forward or step back. History tells you what I chose, but history cannot tell you what it felt like. The doubt, the fear, the weight of knowing that one decision could change the lives of millions. Perhaps that is why this moment still matters. Because every age has its own rivers. Every generation faces moments where there is no perfect choice, only consequences. Was I saving Rome or was I destroying it? Even after 2,000 years, people still argue about the answer. And maybe that is the reason history remembers this moment. Not because a man crossed a river, but because a man stood before a choice and showed the world what one person can change. The past is filled with moments like this. Moments that looked small when they happened, but changed everything that came after. At Untold History, we explore those moments. The decisions, the fears, the choices behind the names we remember. Because history is not only about what happened, it is about what it felt like to be there. If you want to experience more moments where ordinary decisions changed the course of history, join us for the next story.